Hi, everybody. Welcome to Piercing the Veil.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing good. I see we already got chicken lips in here.
This is bothering me. My picture's underneath your logo. There we go.
Ah,
Now it looks
spectacular.
better, I think. I don't know.
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we got quite a few people popping in already. We got Moon at Noon, we got Aussie Sue, we got Gemini. Who else got Blazer,
got Maya Love,
Pixie
Pixie,
Laura,
Heidi, Tim
Heidi.
Mothman.
All right. So tonight we got a special guest, a very good friend of ours, Dennis Carroll, and we've known each other for quite some time now and done other projects together. And he is just a wealth of information, author and documentary. I mean, it's just all kinds of stuff that Dennis has done and touching on all subjects. I mean, you name it, he's covered it. And so it'll
Mm-hmm.
be a good one for this show tonight for the Philadelphia experiment. And I'm sure everybody's probably seen the movies or heard stuff about it, but we're going to dive deep because Dennis has a lot of information on this, and it's just going to be fun digging into it and see where we end up going. So hope everybody's had a good weekend and found us on Sunday here as we're ending the weekend, and hope everybody's had a great week and going to have an even better week coming up. So you got anything else that you'd like to add, Jane, or should we get going?
No, it's been a pretty good week except for the wind. We've had nothing but high winds and high winds and high winds. Then it slows down, and today, once again, we got the high winds. But that's all I got to add. I'm tired of the
All you got
wind.
to add. So I will try my very best to keep up with chat and the conversation with Dennis. So if I miss something, I'm sorry. I don't mean to ignore anybody or not pay attention. And so if it slips by me, I'm sorry, but I'll try my very best to bring up any comments that are pertinent to the subject we're talking about. And other than that, let's bring Dennis up and get going. Hi, Dennis.
Good evening.
Hey,
Good
Dennis.
evening.
Thanks
All
for
right.
coming.
Good to be here. It's always a pleasure. Spend a little time with two of my favorite people.
Thank you. We love you too.
Thank you.
Love enjoying having you.
And we sure enjoy your shows.
Oh, thank you. I haven't quite got up to par with your 1,000 subscribers yet, but I'm working on it.
You'll
Hopefully,
be getting there.
hopefully I'll make it one day.
I think
I want to congratulate you. I want to congratulate you on that. That's quite an
Thank
achievement.
you.
Thank you very much. I
Yeah,
think
thank
everybody's
you.
so used to seeing you on Jessica and other shows that you pop in. They haven't found you yet on your channel, Hunting the Shadows. And I think I have it
It's
in the
kind
description. I'll make sure I put it in there. And if any of the mods would put up Dennis's link to Hunting the Shadows.
It's kind of like trying to sell a car. You got to let everybody know it's available. Yeah.
Yeah, but you've grown pretty fast on your channel. I'm really
Yeah.
impressed. You're really climbing the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I try to keep it. Fresh as I can, anyway. But had an interesting show Friday night. We did the one. I think you were there. Where we did the blessing of objects and all that stuff,
Mhm.
and had a lot of feedback from that show. That was a very positive feedback. So it was very interesting, and I'll try to keep it, kind of fresh if I can. Try not to
Right.
bore people, anyway. Definitely. But that's an
And
interesting subject we've got here tonight. The
well,
Philadelphia
before we
experiment.
get into it, let's go ahead and
Doing.
talk about our show together that we started on Monday.
Oh yeah.
We can get
Oh
people
yeah.
Hunting the
The
Shadows.
road less traveled. Yeah.
Great show.
We got a good show coming up tomorrow. Tomorrow night, that'll be 9 o'clock Eastern time and 8 o'clock p.m. Central time. And we're going to be talking about a very special staircase. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
Yeah. That is a very interesting staircase too. It's got a lot of stories attached to it. So that should be an interesting show, definitely.
Yeah.
The Road Less Traveled. I love that title.
Yep.
Well, one of my
Then,
favorite poems. Yeah.
Then with us, it's where the adventure begins.
Yep. That's it. That's where the adventure starts. That's the interesting thing about the research that we do. I told somebody that the other day. When you go down the rabbit holes, you find out there's a whole network of rabbit holes down there.
Yep. More questions.
Absolutely.
You never know how many tunnels lead off that main one.
Oh, that's right. You never know where you're going to end up, but that's what makes it interesting. Definitely.
Then before you know it, you don't realize how deep it is.
That's right. Research and real deep research will always lead you in all kind of different directions. But the main thing you got to remember when you're doing that is not to forget what you started with, because you can end up way over there in left field somewhere. So you got to remember exactly what you started with and try to get back to it. But there's so many things related, and it truly is. I said that the other day to somebody. It truly is a true statement. Everything in some way or another is connected. It's just the way it goes, but as researchers, we look for patterns, clues, and all that. That's the eye we keep trained for, the things that we're looking for. I learned a long time ago, like I say, back when I first started. Yes, I'm that old. There was no such thing as an internet. I spent a lot of time, a lot of hours in the reference rooms of libraries. Librarians knew me well. They thought I worked there, I think, sometimes. Anyway, they knew me well. They thought that guy again. But anyway, you couldn't take reference books home with you. That was the bad thing. You had to make notes on them and leave them there. But now, as I tell people, you've got such a great tool with the internet. You got the libraries of the world at your fingertips. Use it, utilize it. If we'd had something like that 20 years ago, our research would have been fantastic. I mean, so much more advanced than than it was. But to me, the internet is a very valuable tool. Of course, books are still. I have thousands of books around me. Books are still good places to find stuff at. A lot of people say, "What's a book?" Oh yeah, that's that thing with pages in it. But you still learn from the books too, of course. But here's the thing about it: books are becoming more technically wise, made into digital format as time goes on. More so, and there are books available now, rare books that you cannot get your hands that are in digital form. That is good. That's very good. That's a very good thing, because even rare books that you can't get a hold of, that you can't even find in libraries, are available in electronic form. That's neat. Can't beat that.
Now, have you ever heard? I'm going to pronounce this wrong. I know I am, because I'm not very good at Spanish. But Pixie wants to know about the lore surrounding the Sanctuario of the Chimao.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
And that's what I was saying earlier about the Philadelphia experiment. The first time I ever heard about it, I actually found that I was a teenager. I guess I might have been 16, 17 years old, something like that. And I was already deep into paranormal stuff. And matter of fact, I have been in the paranormal my whole life. I cannot remember a time that really I wasn't fascinated by this subject, all of its different subjects. But I probably was about 16, 17 years old when I found this book called Invisible Horizons by Vincent Gaddis. I was saying, if you can still get a hold of this book, get it, because it is a wealth of paranormal knowledge. But it's about the true mysteries of the sea and paranormal mysteries of the sea, like the Mary Celeste and some of these other, interesting, like the Bermuda Triangle, of course, and some of these other things that are associated with the ocean. But one of these things was definitely the Philadelphia experiment. And I got fascinated by this because, like I said, this is one of the best things, if it never really happened, should have happened.
Right.
It is a great story, and it is a fantastic science fiction story. And I'm sure a lot of you people listening out there tonight have seen the movie that they made on the Philadelphia experiment. And the movie, like I said earlier, was very close to what truly happened, supposedly, in the legend of the Philadelphia experiment. And Hollywood doesn't usually do that. They usually elaborate way out there somewhere, but they really stuck to this pretty good. So if you've seen the movie, you know a lot about the story of the Philadelphia experiment. Okay, but if you
Yep.
haven't, then you need to check that movie out if you get a chance. But that's the name of the movie, by the way, the Philadelphia experiment. I forget who stars in. Do you remember who was the
No,
star in it?
I don't remember who stars in it.
I don't remember it. I don't think it was a real big name star, but anyway, it was a good movie. It was a good movie. Yeah, but it's a fascinating story. And I know our friend Jessica, the cryptid huntress, did a thing on haunted or strange Montauk. And of
Mhm.
course, they say on the anniversary now, the Philadelphia experiment supposedly took place in 1943 on October the 28th, I believe. And they say that there is a story that the portal still opens up at Montauk on at that date. I don't know if the ship is supposedly seen, but the portal supposedly opens up. That this ship opened up supposedly. I have to keep say supposedly on this because there is a lot of legend that has grown up around this story. And what's what we're going to have to do now is kind of cut through the legend to get to the bone of the real truth of what really happened in 1943 on the docks with a ship called the Eldridge, the USS Eldridge. It's a fascinating story, though, whichever way you look at it.
Well,
But I have done a lot of intensive research on it.
I'm sure
Definitely.
everybody's seen the ship, but I do have some pictures for tonight, so I'll just go ahead and bring a picture of
Yeah.
the ship up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That is, of course, the Eldridge. It's been scrapped. It was scrapped a long time ago, but it had, I think, a pretty impressive war record for a ship its size. And what supposedly happened on it, though, that's the main story, the legend of the Philadelphia experiment. But like I say, I've done a lot of extensive research on this, and I found out that there is a whole lot, just like Roswell, there's a whole lot of legend grown up around this thing. And that's what we're going to have to cut through tonight to figure out exactly what really happened. Now, first of all, according to the legend, Einstein is involved in this. Okay. And it all goes back to Einstein's unified field theory. Okay. Now, if I'll explain that in layman's terms right quick, what he speculated that there was a unifying field that put everything together, like gravity, space, time, and all that. There was a unifying field. If you could tap into that field, you could have anti-gravity. You could do all kinds of things, supposedly. That was his theory. To this day, I do not think it has absolutely been proven to be a fact that there is such a thing as a unified field theory, field itself. But if there is something like that connecting space itself, the darkness, the emptiness in between space is supposedly filled with neutrons as well. So you could theoretically, if you could actually tap into the unified field, you could have an unlimited amount of power from nothing. Think about that a minute. That's weird. From nothing, from space, you could have all the power you wanted. It would be great if you could do that, but maybe one day they will find out that there is a way to do that. But anyway, that's part of that. But how the unified field theory gets involved in this story is interesting because supposedly Einstein observed this experiment because he supposedly helped them install the equipment on the ship. He was supposed to be the brain behind it, but the government did not want anybody to know that Einstein was involved. Let me say this about Einstein, if you want to look at it theoretically. He was America's top secret nuclear weapon, you might say. This guy knew everything, you know. He was behind a lot of stuff. He was their secret weapon beyond all things. So they watched him very closely and what he was involved in and what they let people know he was associated with. So Einstein was, supposedly involved. It was very low key. They didn't want anybody to know he was involved in it. We got a question. Could you ask if she's ever heard of Tesla was initially involved but left before they activated? There is a rumor that Tesla and Einstein had a falling out over this thing. Yeah, that they supposedly didn't agree on how to go about this. And Tesla now here's the legend. Okay, now there's nothing to divide this up with. But Tesla supposedly told Einstein, it's not going to work the way you want it to work, and it's too dangerous to mess with. So he supposedly walked off and left it. And they say that Einstein agreed with him to a certain extent, but he was pressured by the military to do this.
Ah.
That's why and they say that when everything went bad, he said he just backed out of it. This is too dangerous. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm getting out.
Yeah, I
so
heard
he kind of supposedly vacated behind Tesla. He kind of left after Tesla. What?
I heard Tesla was worried about the magnetism and radiation coming off the coils that would harm the crew members, and he wanted to reinforce the boat to protect it with insulation type stuff. And the military says, I don't care what you do, but we're still going ahead with the project on this date.
Wow.
Supposedly, Einstein was worried about the magnetic field itself, the properties of it, and what it might do. Now, according to legend, what happened after they turned the machine on? The first time, there were several times that this experiment supposedly took place. Okay, the first time that they supposedly activated the machinery, the ship disappeared, but it left behind a sort of a green, weird fog. In other words, and then it came back very quickly. Okay, but now this first time that it came back, this is when Einstein was supposed to say, hey, I'm not going to mess with this anymore. Because the first time it came back, one crew member was embedded in the ship forecastle, they call it, the main battery. He was actually embedded in that, the first crew member. The second time they did it, more crew members were embedded in the bulk of the ship. The second time that they did it. Now, the second time is supposedly when it didn't have any kind of a greenish fog. And when it disappeared completely, it appeared in Norfolk, Virginia. From Philadelphia to Norfolk, which I think is like 200 miles or something like that. And it appeared there, and some people on another ship supposedly saw it. And they say that there is, and I'm going to get to this in a minute, they say there is no way humanly possible you could run a ship from Philadelphia to Norfolk in 2 hours.
Right.
Okay. Which is when this supposedly happened. But there is a way to do that, but we'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, that's what they said they saw. And the people saw this on another ship. I cannot remember the name of that ship. I know it and I can't think of it. On another ship in Norfolk, Virginia, saw the Eldridge appear and disappear. And it said it was like it was there for quite a while, which might have been like an hour or so like that. And then it disappeared. And when it reappeared again, back at the dock in Philadelphia, is when a lot of crew members ended up with 3 different things going on. Okay, some of them ended up embedded in the bulwark of the ship. Got that picture you showed. Some of them ended up like that. Some of them went completely insane from it. Yeah, they lost it completely. And some of them began to freeze up and phase out. Now, what they mean by that, they would just freeze. They'd be talking, and all of a sudden they'd freeze. Like they were, and what you're dealing with here, supposedly, is going in and out of time and space.
Right.
That's what's going on, supposedly. They were still wavering from the effects of the experiment. And they could be like one of them was supposed to have been at a bar or something, and he disappeared in front of everybody. Just phased out. That was it. And Another one supposedly that went insane. The doctor went to talk to him, and he had him in a ward in a supposedly straitjacket. And the guy went to him. He said, "I can't talk to him. He's just froze up in there. He was just like, the mouth was open. He was just like frozen in time, per se." And so you had stories like that coming supposedly from this experiment. And supposedly the men who were embedded in the hull, they had to cut them out piece by piece. And most of them were dead because they were embedded in metal. That will kill you, of course. You're not going to live through that kind of thing, especially if it's your head stuck in the bulwark. So they had to supposedly go in and cut them out piece by piece and take them out. All this was real hush-hush. But the first time that the experiment took place was not quite so bad, see, as the second time, because supposedly they left the machinery on longer. That's why the thing disappeared and stayed a while. The other port and came back. It was on longer, and when the longer it ran, the more lost in time they got, per se. Okay. Now here's where the movie and the true facts differ. In the movie, The Philadelphia Experiment, they actually go through time back in, like in the night, they go forward in time, actually to like 1973 from 1943 or something like that. You remember that? Anyway, they did not time travel that way. Supposedly, they teleported through time. Okay. So they were moving through time. So in order to move through time, in order for you to teleport through time, it's like if you wanted to send Jane to the grocery store without her actually getting in the car and riding there. You could send her through a portal through time. She would be right there instantly at the grocery store.
Right.
That's a smart way to travel when you think about it.
Now, what I had heard,
yeah.
my story is what I heard is when the ship started to go green or the green fog around the ship, that Ed Bielik and his brother jumped over, which would be Cameron, the Cameron brothers, jumped overboard because they got freaked out because of the weird stuff going on. And that's when they say they got transported to these different times. So there
is talk about that, the transportation into different time frames. Another thing, though, that questioned that, Gerald, was were they really in their right minds? Because this thing was affecting people's minds. Okay. And here, you got to remember one thing. A large, vast amount of time is where? In the brain. In the mind. Okay. Time passes. The sun goes up and goes down. You see time pass. A lot of the time, and especially the way people calculate time, is in the mind. But time is also, you got to remember this too, time is also another dimension. Time and space, is the fourth dimension. Okay. Really, that's what it's called. There's 4 dimensions. Up and down, sideways, in and out, and time and space. That's the 4 dimensions. There may be a 5th dimension. Now listen to this. The 5th dimension, like the Twilight Zone always talks about, this is the Twilight Zone, the 5th dimension. The 5th dimension may be your movement through space and time. You know what I'm saying? That portal to portal, cutting through time and space, in other words. You're like punching a hole in it. And when you go in through time and space, you're punching a hole in it, you're sort of making space there. You're, just like you would if you put a hand through a piece of cloth or cardboard or something. You're making a space in it. That space might be the 5th dimension. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
People speculate on that. To this day, there's a lot of speculation on that. But that's one way to look at it. But when you move portal to portal, and I have actually seen, and I'm not going to get into that tonight. That's something for another show. But I have actually seen spiritual entities manifest in that manner.
Oh.
I believe it can be done under certain circumstances. And if you look at the Philadelphia Experiment, that's supposedly what happened. But like I say, the Hollywood thing kind of had them going way in the future and some weird stuff going on. They had to do all that. You remember that's the way the movie went. But anyway,
Right.
that a lot of that was not reported supposedly. But some of the things that the men say that they experienced on that ship, a lot of people say it could have been aberrations of the mind because their minds were being magnetized. In other words, they were being subjected to high magnetic forces. Okay, if you've ever done any ghost hunting, you know an EMF detector is one of your
Right.
crucial things to have. EMF
Mhm.
is what you go look for. Well, what you're talking about here under these circumstances are extremely, terribly, extremely high field of EMF here. We don't know what that would really do to a human mind.
Right.
But you know what? We have some ideas because certain energy weapons that we do know really exist have the capacity to do that, to affect people's minds, to make
Right.
you sick, to knock your equilibrium off, do all kinds of freak. We know that they can do that. We look at the Havana syndrome. Okay, we know these things do probably exist. So what kind of an effect that would have on a human mind? You might think you might be moving through time. You might be free. And, here's another thing you got to think about. When they froze up, like we're talking about, and to me, that's one of the kind of spookiest part of it all. When somebody just freezes up like that, are you not like frozen in time? Or are you moving in a time that the people around you can't see? In other words, you could be moving all around, but to us, you would appear to be frozen because you're moving on a different length, a
Right.
wavelength, you might say. Yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta wonder about that too.
I can imagine how strong those coils were if they made them to make the ship disappear. I mean, if they had a Tesla coil in the front and the back, like they said they did with a big array antenna, I mean, my gosh, that's putting out a lot of radiation and magnetism.
Yeah, well, yeah, and like I say, is at high levels, nobody knew what that was going to do. I mean, that there's no telling what that would do. But it would definitely, what I'm saying, it would definitely have to affect your mind and your perception of time and space. It would definitely have to do that to a certain extent. Now, whether they actually move through time and space is conjecture if that happened. But during my initial research, I could never find proof that any of that ever really happened. You got a lot of hearsay. Oh, somebody said this, somebody said that. And the guy that supposedly disappeared in the bar that happened, that whole incident was not the real thing. I mean, what they say really happened was the guy was underage drinking in the bar, and he told one of the waitresses to get him out of there because the military police showed up. And she said he just disappeared. In other words, she got him out there.
Right.
That's what that whole thing was supposed to be about. So you got a lot of weird conjecture going on about this. Like I say, you've got a lot of legend going up around this of things that may not necessarily be true. But we do know this without a doubt that the degaussing of these ships took place because they were warships. They had to be degaussed so that sea mines, could not find them and attach to the hull and blow them up. They actually did degauss the Eldridge. We know that for a fact that they had the machine run, and the ship that supposedly saw it disappear was also degaussed. Now, when you do that sort of anti-magnetic. In other words, because you want to keep your ship from being magnetic. In other words, metallic. So you want to make it invisible. So what the whole thing grows up around this is that the whole experiment was to make the Eldridge supposedly disappear to the radar, not to sight, but to radar. Supposedly that's what Einstein signed on for. Okay. And when they started this other stuff, that's when he said, I'm not going to mess with that. I'm not going to have anything to do with that. That's when he supposedly left the project. And he supposedly left the project after the first time. After the first one, because he saw that they were not doing what he, was there to do.
Right.
And somebody supposedly down the chain of command said, "Oh, let's try it again, and let's do it a long time this next time and see what really happened. And it got even worse, supposedly. And that's when the cover up supposedly started, because the higher in command they went, their butts were out there slowly twisting in the wind or something like that. So they definitely going to cover it up.
So
to protect their
believe,
jobs.
Dennis, do you believe that like during the time when they first started the project, and invisibility project, that the ship actually disappeared? Because some of the reports saying that it actually disappeared to sight and off a radar.
Well, that was the main thing. Like I say, it was a radar thing. Hedy Lamarr was also instrumental in making some kind of a thing about radar. And she's actually, Hedy Lamarr, the actress, is the one that discovered wireless stuff.
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
They're starting to give
heard
her
of
credit
that.
for Bluetooth.
Well, see, the Germans, the Nazis had very good radar. And that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to cloak themselves against that radar. So the whole thing was, it was not supposed to be trying to move through time and space and disappear. It was trying to make themselves disappear to radar. But supposedly the first time they said, hey, what happened? All this green fog shows up, that's when Einstein said, I'm not going to mess with this anymore. I'm leaving. This is not what I signed up for. That's supposedly when he left. Tesla never actually observed it as Einstein supposedly did. Tesla just said, I'm not getting involved. You're messing with some dangerous stuff. You're doing this magnetism, a CMF, you're doing that. I'm not going to mess with that. Tesla, we know, was a super smart guy. That doesn't surprise me if that had happened in that manner. But Einstein, who's being very smart too, you wouldn't get out. He said, I didn't sign up for that, But if they could have found something that cloaked them to radar, we would have won the war a whole lot quicker. I can see I can see what they were working for.
Exactly.
But what happened, supposedly after that, that's the interesting part. But I cannot find, like I said in my research, that any of this actually ever really took place. There's not a trail that you can find on it. Like I say, this is a lot of legend. I believe they were experimenting, trying to make themselves disappear to radar. And that's why a lot of these stories got started up around that and all that stuff that supposedly took place. You have a mysterious figure involved in all this. His name was Carlos Allende. He was also called himself Carl Allen. And this guy was a known hoaxer who supposedly made up most of this. Okay. And he actually had a book by Morris Jessup. You ever heard of Jessup?
Yes.
Yeah. He committed suicide, supposedly. And I don't think it had anything to do with the Philadelphia experiment. He had some bad things going on in his life. But this kind of makes you wonder, that is kind of a strange coincidence, isn't it? But Morris Jessup got this communication from this guy named Carlos Allende. I like this Spanish name. Carlos Allende, or as he called himself, Carl M. Allen. Turned out that was his real name. His name was like Carl Martin Allen or something like that. But he was not really. He just gave himself a fancy name like Carlos Allende. Anyway, he had a book, a copy of Jessup's book. And he had written anecdotes all in this book in 3 different colors of blue ink. And there was something like, and one of them was like a conversation between 2 men, between him and another guy named Jimmy. And anyway, the whole thing comes down to, they said they're like saying stuff like, do they know that the aliens are involved in this, or do they know that all this is really alien technology they're messing with? How close is Jessup to finding out the real truth? You hear all kinds of weird stuff in this book. Right. And he made sure that Jessup got a hold of this book. But he was a big hoaxer. And another guy that investigated the Philadelphia experiment found out who Carl Allen really was. And he turned out to be like a friend of a friend. He knew this guy. And it turned out he was a big hoaxer. He left to pull people's legs on stuff. But that's where Jessup was Jessup was involved in a lot of this. But here's the interesting thing. Some people in a company, I cannot remember the name of the company, which was heavily involved in the beginning of NASA and Operation Paperclip and all that stuff. Actually, some of the guys in this company got a hold of this book and made 127 copies of it with all these notes in it, okay, and passed it around. And that's why the legend became fact to a certain degree, okay. That's how the legend became supposedly fact, that this book got passed around by this guy. So that's really the true roots of the Philadelphia experiment. When you start your research, you run into that. Oh, who said what and what said what and what did they do and where did it come from? The interesting thing is, I think, without a doubt, there was something going on with the Eldridge, but it wasn't what people think it truly was. I believe it was Degosson, is what it basically was. But they said we did this. And here's the thing about it. Nobody ever reported getting sick or anything from Degosson. Okay. A lot of people were on the ships and they did that. Matter of fact, that was standard procedure, not just in our naval things, but in the naval systems of the world. You do that during wartime to keep from picking up mines. Smart idea. That's you're going through the water, you don't pick up a mine, that's the end of you. So that is making yourself virtually invisible to the mines in that respect.
Right.
But they would have loved to have had something to make them invisible to radar, without a doubt. That would have been it. Not just invisible, but now, according to the unified field theory, if you can bend light, Gerald and Jane, if you can bend light around something, you can what? You make it invisible. Yeah. According to the unified field theory. And that is another hypothesis of the Philadelphia experiment. That when they turn those big, large magnetic producing machines on, it bent light around the Eldridge. So that it disappeared. Theoretically, that could work. Theoretically.
Right.
Yeah.
Except
so that is the interesting aspect of the Philadelphia experiment. It could have been real to that extent, although it probably wasn't. It could have been.
See, I only know the story of Al Bielek and what he told off of Art Bell show a long time ago. I listened to that, and between that and watching the movie Philadelphia Experiment, so that's pretty much where I've got my information. So I kind of believe some of that could have happened, whether it was completely factual, but I mean, there has to be some facts in there somewhere, I would think.
Well, that's what the basis of real good legends are all about. You get pieces of the true things and fit them in, although that doesn't make the whole thing true. You know what I'm saying? You have elements of the truth, but that may not be the whole ball of wax. You've got elements of truth in the Philadelphia experiment. Like I said about the bending of the light. You got the fact that Einstein might have been involved slightly in the beginning of it. You got a lot of elements of truth, but the whole rest of the thing may not be true. I mean, that's just what I could find out with my own research of the Philadelphia experiment. You have a lot of dead ends with it. You have a lot of rabbit holes that end in a dead end kind of thing. You don't, and it's like a lot of hearsay, unfortunately. But what if it were real? Here's the interesting part. Now, that's when I look at something like that, I always like to look at the part, what if it had really happened? What if something like that really happened? And there are other stories that sort of are very similar to that I have read and I've researched that are very similar to the Philadelphia experiment. And the fact that there's a lot of portal activity. I've experienced that my own self. With my own encounter, I think was what I had. It was a portal thing going on. There are a lot of stories that are very similar to what supposedly happened with the Philadelphia experiment, going through a time portal, time and space, or whatever situation you want to call it. That's what's fascinating about legends like this. You have to ask, could it have something like that really happen, even if this didn't happen? Could something like that really take place? The same thing goes with Roswell. You know, what really happened with Roswell, we may never, ever really truly know. But a lot of conjectures gone into the fact it may have been test dummies that were dropped out of a plane and all that. You've got a lot of weird stuff in it that makes that a legend unto itself as well. But what did some people who actually said they saw these things? They saw the crash ship. They saw the aliens. There's one part of the story of Roswell in it, just like the Philadelphia experiment, that intrigued me, are the supposed eyewitness accounts. Okay, that's what you got to go look at. Anytime you have eyewitness accounts, you got to look at them very closely. And there are a lot of eyewitness accounts missing out of the Philadelphia experiment. There are more so in the Roswell thing than there are in the Philadelphia experiment. But now, here's one thing. Let me tell you this. Is the story. One thing that really impressed me was the funeral director supposedly saying that he got an order for child's caskets to be brought to the air base. And I remember that.
Yep.
That was a bunch of bull. I mean, that never really happened, but it got reported as an eyewitness account. So that's what you got to watch out for. He never saw the alien bodies. He might have got a phone call, but that's as far as it went. You know what I'm saying? He might have got a phone call from somebody. I don't know. But anyway, you got to watch out about some of those eyewitness reports. And when you get to the Philadelphia experiment, you got to wonder about what some of these guys have talked about. The two brothers you talk about that supposedly jumped off the ship. You never heard anything about them until the Philadelphia experiment became supposedly well known, talked about. Then they came out of nowhere. Same thing with Carl Allen or Carlos Allende, whichever name you want to call him. He never showed up until people got to talking about it a little bit, and he come up with the book that Jessup, wrote.
Yeah, because actually Al Bielek was watching the movie The Philadelphia Experiment and started to feel like he had deja vu, like he's been there. And that's kind of how his journey started, and saying he was Ed Cameron.
You got to remember something strange about the human mind, okay? You can talk yourself into anything if you want to. That's just the way things go. And you have to wonder, and listen, I've done a lot of research on so-called recovered memory of abductees and all this other stuff. And even people claim to have had past lives and all this other things. All memories, okay, you got to remember this about memories, okay? All memories are not necessarily true memories. They can be what you thought you remembered, but never really did. You got to be very careful when you deal with memories, even trying to recover memories, because they can be subject to your imagination big time.
Right.
And that's what makes them very fallible. You have to be very careful with memories. Because, look, okay, you look at somebody that comes to you and says, Jane, girl, I got abducted by aliens when I was 10 years old. And you got to ask this guy, have you ever seen any movies about being abducted by aliens? Have you ever read any books about being abducted by aliens? Have you talked about it? Have you seen TV shows? And most of the time they'll say, yeah, I have. And I feel like that happened to me. But they do not understand that those stories and those movies and those conversations could have imprinted that in their mind. To the point where they think that happened to them too. Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. People can do that. It's very easy to do that. So you got to be very careful when it comes to memories. They can be very fallible. Your imagination can talk you into believing things. Look how many times we think something terrible is going to happen. And it never does, but our imagination made it seem like it was going to happen. That's the way the imagination works, the human imagination. So we have to be very careful how we deal with that. I'm not saying that all people that have been abducted have fake memories. I'm not saying that. Some, I believe, truly have had the experiences. But you've got to be very careful how you approach that. and how you ascertain what you're looking for, all that, because that is a thing about the human mind. I'm going to tell you what, and I've said this before, and I stand by it. One of the greatest unexplored areas in the universe is the human mind. You can do some wild stuff. Absolutely. But when it comes to the Philadelphia experiment, like I say, my research shows me there's a lot of legend has grown up, just like around a lot of other incidences. I'll give you a quick illustration. Right here in the town where I live in, somebody came to me a few years ago and said, "Do you know that there's a haunted railroad track so and so?" I said, "Yes, I am familiar with the railroad crossing." She said, "Well, a lot of little kids got killed in a bus, and if you park there, they'll push your car over there." I said, "Yeah, that's in Texas. Okay, that's not here." I said, "What you heard of that? Somebody found, you heard that from somebody who heard that from somebody else and all this other thing."
Right.
That's how legends get started. Here's the, but you gotta, like I said, you gotta examine it very closely to see what it is you're truly dealing with. That's like the most famous ghost story of all. You know what that is, don't you?
The
The most famous ghost story, the ghostly hitchhiker. That's all over the world. You hear it time after time. Every highway is almost where the ghostly hitchhiker is. Okay,
I was going to say the
because
lady in white.
it gets passed around. That's like people. I had a bunch of college students come to me a few years ago, and they looked me up because I know about all this stuff. And they said, "Could you tell us about Crybaby Bridge? There's a Crybaby Bridge right here, not far from where I live, and I know all about it." And they said, "You tell us about Crybaby Bridge?" I said, "Sure, I'll tell you the legend of it, but it's not." There's a Crybaby Bridge in almost every town around here. Okay, which one you want to talk about?
Almost every state has one.
Huh.
Yeah. And these legends get passed around from location to location. That's just legends. I forget who it was said that legends can actually take on a life of their own.
Mm.
And you had to watch that. And I think a lot of that happened with the Philadelphia experiment. Okay. It sounds great. Like I say, it's the best thing that never happened. Okay. But it's a great story. Great science fiction story that they actually would go through time. But I'm going to tell you this. Things that I have learned, things that I've researched tells me that, and I'm going to tell you something freaky here, okay?
All right.
That even there are certain auspices of our government that took the Philadelphia experiment to heart and may have tried to replicate it.
Oh.
Mm.
Okay.
That's wild. Yeah, okay, that's wild because they took it to heart. And like I say, they get a lot of ideas from things like this, okay? They might have said, "Hey, that didn't happen, but what if it could happen? Or what if we could do something like that?" And I would not doubt if that is not part of the CERN collider thing going on. Not a lot of focus on that because let me tell you what I just said earlier about Jane going to the grocery store. If you go through that time warp, you go through that portal, whatever name you want to give it, that is the perfect way to travel. Let me tell you this: an intelligent species, a so-called intelligent species, would not develop a ship to fly from one galaxy to another. That's ridiculous. You don't do that. There's a vast distances from here to Alpha Centauri. You don't even want to think about it. The vast distances. That's impractical. Would not make any sense. The number one way to travel through space and time is through space and time. Through corridors of space and time. Not through time and space itself. That's what I'm saying. You got to punch a hole. You got to punch that hole in time and space and travel that way. That makes perfect sense to anybody. That's the way to travel. And do not think without 1 second that our government would not like to have that capacity.
Right. They like to weaponize
Oh, yeah.
stuff.
Oh, yeah. And look how much, if you had the ability to do that, look how much would fall into place on that. What you could do, you could teleport, you could move objects, you could, say, move. Think about this. This is fascinating. You could move at the speed of thought. In other words, Earl, you could say, I want to be on the moon, and you would be there.
Right.
Just that quick. Okay. That's the way to travel. Not getting in a ship and trying to get there. And let me tell you something else. You don't hear much about this. Look how much power it takes to pierce through the atmosphere of this planet.
Mm-hmm.
That's not practical.
Right.
If you're going to work off planet, you got to work through what? Portals. That's just all there is to it. If you want to work off planet, if you want to go to another planet, the best way to get there is not in a rocket ship. It'd be to step in a beam of light. They would put you there. The speed of thought. So if you would go to Mars, that's the way I want to go to Mars. Okay.
Yeah,
I want to step in there and be there.
You know, they've talked about that. You know, the trip is so long to go to Mars or anywhere we want to go that, you know, they have to be in time suspension, you know, cryogenics, something so your body's not aging and you basically you're sleeping or in a, I don't know.
And look, if you get to Mars, look at something else you got to deal with. The radiation will kill you. You can't live there. Radiation will kill you. So if you're gonna stay on Mars, you got to stay in a protected area. That's all. You can't go out wandering around on Mars and expect to live very long because the radiation will kill you. Why? Because Mars has no what? Very little atmosphere, just like we have. That's what's keeping us. That's what's keeping us from being killed by that star we call the sun. Our atmosphere. And you still, even with atmosphere, we still got a problem with the sun. Because every now and then, it hits us with some bad storm. So there you go. You know, we're in a perfect place, a perfect position. And that's why I tell a lot of people, how can you not say that all of this is not some kind of design, that it just happened like that?
Right.
This is a perfect design we're talking about here for a perfect life, incubation of life on this planet. Although we are foolishly destroying that day after day, we're messing with that. Like I said, you know, they're playing a God game with this. Man will never quit monkeying around with nature. That's it. Teleport to Mars underground. You'd have to end up underground on Mars, John Tampering. Yes, absolutely.
I mean,
because
even NASA,
you're not going to live long.
Even NASA and them say, you know, if we're going to colonize Mars, it's going to be a one-way trip. You're not coming back from Mars. You're there to stay, whatever happens.
It would be easier to get you there than to get you back.
Well,
and right now, they've got samples they want to bring back from Mars, and they can't figure out how to do it. They're trying to get the samples back to Earth from Mars. Right now, it's a one-way trip, no matter which way you look at it. But you don't hear people talk about that much. But there are certain limits to this thing that you've got to overcome. And the unified field would definitely be the way to do it. You know what I'm saying? If you could latch onto that, pierce time and space, do what you want to, you would be the master of the universe, just about, kind of a thing. You know what I'm saying? And no wonder the government is pulling out all stops to find that power, the ultimate power.
I'm going to be joking, but what if the Eldridge teleported to Mars, and that's how we got the idea to go there?
that's all she wrote. But anyway, yeah.
So, do you have anything else to talk about the Philadelphia experiment, Dennis, or you want to move on?
Well, we'll go with a little bit more into the Philadelphia experiment with something. Sort of an offshoot out of it. But like I said, the CERN collider and all that stuff are the ways that they are seeking to actually open a portal. Okay. They want to learn how to do that. But I've said this before, that there are certain other ways to open portals. Let's look at the portals a moment in that fifth dimension I mentioned earlier. That other fifth dimension would be, I would say, and I'm just speculating my own self on this, that fifth dimension would have to be in the realm of the spiritual aspects of this universe. You get me where I'm going here?
Yep.
It would have to be in the spiritual realms of it, because it is a completely different existence from what you and I and Jane are sitting in right now tonight. Okay, we're in a what? Physical existence,
Yes.
where there's 4 dimensions, and the 5th if you count the spiritual ramifications of it. So when you deal with the spiritual things, you're talking about portals, you're talking about opening portals up in there. There are certain ways supposedly that can be done. Now, in my studies of the occult and the supernatural aspects of that, I think the people who have studied a lot of this and have done a lot of the occult work and all this stuff, they are seeking to open these doorways. Okay? That's just like Skinwalker Ranch supposedly has some of these doorways. I have a friend who investigated Skinwalker Ranch and actually saw a portal open and close there. Now, if these people can open and close these doorways, that's what science wants to know. But now listen to this. This is the interesting part. Like when it goes with the Philadelphia experiment, science says, oh, no, that's not how you do it. That's magic or something, spiritual. They don't believe in that part of it. They don't believe in that. We got to do it the physical way. That's science, okay? But now here's the weird thing, and I talk about this in that book I'm writing, The God Game. Okay. Here's the weird thing about it. Science is now looking at blending ancient magic with new technology. I call it dark science. Okay. Because it is dark. It's not good stuff. Because they're blending this together into a new alchemy. Okay. But they won't tell you this. They're not letting this be known. They're widely known. But that's why scientists, government has started asking demonologists about demonology. Why? That was a telltale flag right there. Okay. They are getting into some really weird stuff here, because they are saying, hey, maybe you were right all along. You can't open these portals with your mind or with certain things, aspects, or whatever it is you do. And maybe we got it wrong. Maybe we've been trying it the physical way, like the CERN collider and all these other things, when maybe you found a better way to do it. So they're investigating all avenues of this, you see, because they are after, this would be the ultimate power in the universe. If you could get it, you will be top dog. Okay, that's it. And that's exactly what they're looking for. And they don't care how they get it. They pull out all the stops. So I'm sure the Philadelphia experiment inspired them, along with other things like Tesla and all these other things that we know about. I'm sure that has inspired them to begin their search. And it may not be a good thing for all of us in the end. It may be very bad, the way it comes out. But I guarantee you, they have paid attention to this stuff. So therefore, the legend is becoming facts.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like all the stuff we see in movies, that the government always tries to make it happen, like all the stuff that we've seen, like wristwatches from Dick Tracy, that you can talk into. Oh, what do we got these days?
Actually,
phones,
and there is a theory that there are only so many lists of ideas in the universe, and we keep passing them around over and over and over. We keep passing the ideas around, and we take our own spin on that idea. Let me give you a quick illustration, and as a demonologist, I can tell you this. You remember Slender Man?
Mm-hmm.
He was made up on creepypasta. People made him up. It was not true. None of it, not a bit of it was true. But let me tell you this. Slender Man now truly exists, because the demonic took that idea and said, hey, we can do something with this. So now Slender Man exists. Be careful what you think up.
Yep, they manifested
it. Come into existence. Yeah. And you know what? I mentioned this on my show the other night on Hunting the Shadows. It's not a good idea to let all of your ideas and plans be known, because
Mm.
somebody, something is always listening
Oh,
and watching. You know what I'm saying? And believe me, these things get out, they can take on a life of their own to a certain extent. We have to be very, very careful about that.
Mm-hmm.
right.
Because it very plainly, very specifically said, Jesus said in the Bible, if you're going to go somewhere, go do it. Don't say you're going to go there, just do it. Or if you got something to do, don't say it out loud, just go do it. That makes perfect sense. Don't let your plans be known. Don't let your innermost secrets out. It's better to keep them that way. The government believes in that greatly.
Yeah.
The government, and here's the funny thing. I have to laugh at this. People keep talking about disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. They're not going to disclose anything. Come on. They're not going to really disclose the real stuff. Okay. They're smarter than that. They're not going to do that. They may give you little tidbits, to satisfy you for a while. I'll give you a little bit here and there, but they're not going to tell you the whole story, because governments could not exist as governments without what? Their secrets.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Dennis, I think this has been a good show. I think we could probably go ahead and end it here, unless you have something else you want to talk about.
No, I'm fine. I think we turned the Philadelphia experiment up something there, definitely.
That was awesome.
I mean, personally, I still like to believe in the lore of the Philadelphia experiment. I still kind of lean towards I'd really like to think that happened.
I would too, really. I mean, like I said, it's the best thing that ever happened. But like I say, in my research, I could not find absolute proof the smoking gun. But that's a good way it goes with a lot of paranormal research. It's hidden very well. That's why this world of the occult. That word occult means hidden knowledge.
Right.
And it stays hidden from us, just but as researchers, we research the best we can with what we have.
Yeah.
But it usually tells the story, but it's not. A lot of times, it's not what I want it to be. Sometimes that's the way it goes. But it was a great story, though. Great story, definitely. But it's a story.
Yeah, just like Roswell and everything else, we know if it actually happened, the government's not going to tell us the truth about it anyway.
No. But like I say, they have taken. I feel like have taken that to heart to make it come true to a certain extent in their respect, and so that therefore makes the Philadelphia experiment more true than you would think it is in that respect. That's the interesting sideline to it.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, we had a lot of people in here in chat, and I'm sorry I didn't get to say hello to each individual person that's been in chat, and I've been paying attention to your comments. I try to bring up the ones that were pertinent.
Maybe they got some questions. Maybe they got some questions. Maybe they got some questions for us.
Well, I think everything that they asked, we had already talked about, and I tried to bring them up as we were talking about it. But if they bring something up here before we go, then I'll bring it up. But while they're doing that, we can go ahead and I'll show our show again tomorrow night, Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern or 8 p.m. Central. It's going to be The Road Less Traveled, and that's going to be on Dennis's channel, Hunting the Shadow. And I have his channel and his book on Amazon and his personal website, Dennis W. Carroll, on the internet. So I have that all in the description, so you can find us there. And so don't miss it tomorrow night. We're going to be talking about the mystery of the staircase.
That's going to be good.
And Wednesday night at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Hunting the Shadows. I'm going to have an interesting show. Reptile dysfunction. Okay. Reptile dysfunction. I'm of the true nature of reptilians. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about on Hunting the Shadows. And then Friday night on Paranormal Point of View, 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Everything's at 9:00 Eastern Standard Time now. We're going to be talking about cursed objects. So that
Oh,
should be interesting.
nice.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that subject. You
Oh,
hear a
that'll
lot
be
about
Yeah.
it.
good.
Yeah. So it should be
Then you
interesting.
announced
To,
a new show coming up, or a new I can't think of
oh
it.
yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
on
Nephilim
July 26th, I will have a special 2-hour seminar
seminar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Seminar.
on seminar on Wednesday. It'll be on Wednesday night at 9 o'clock p.m. It's on the Nephilim, the rise of the fallen, and
Hmm.
that's going to concern about our future with these forces that are coming up. So
Wow.
that should be interesting.
That'll be good.
I like the seminars.
Yeah, I do too. I like your seminars.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll just say goodbye to everybody, and just stay there, Dennis. And we'll just say thank you, everybody, for coming. We love you. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. Make sure you go over to Dennis's and Hunting the Shadow and subscribe to him. And who knows, you'll probably see him on Jessica the Huntress's show, Jessica Jones, because Dennis is a good guest and he's always over there, and because he's so knowledgeable on many, many subjects. So Jessica likes to have him on as much as she can, just like we do. And so make sure you go over to Dennis's channel and also Jessica's, because you'll catch Dennis there once in a while too.
Yep.
So in saying that, we love you guys. Thank you for coming. Keep looking
That's
up
a pleasure.
and raise your vibrations. Oh, look at that. Jane got hearts coming up.
Yeah, I got hearts.
Yeah, neat.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I don't got
All
hearts.
right.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, look at that. All right. We got some
That's
tech
neat.
going on there.
Yeah.
Or magic. Which was it? Magic?
I
Or
don't
tech?
know. Do I do the thumbs up? Well,
There
I
you
didn't
go.
do the thumbs up. Now, come on. Oh, there it is.
There it is.
There it is.
There you go.
All right. Now that we know Jane has superpowers, we better end and investigate this. So I haven't said that. We love you guys. We'll see you next time. Bye, all.